I recognize that if I want mercy and your good opinion, I would have to keep this short. So first things first, I think it's a word of thank you to all of our speakers, our facilitators, our sponsors, Catholic University, John Garvey, Steve Schnecht, my colleague from USCCB, Steve Kalecki, and also CRS colleague Bill O'Keefe. Please give all of them a big hand. In my new work with CRS, I'm usually filled with two emotions. The first one is just being overwhelmed by the problems that we face. Oftentimes, the problems are enormous and they're dark. And it's not just about oppression and brutality or extreme deprivation. Sometimes it's also the discouragement of a society which increasingly loses a sense of the holy and a sense of God and what we call the progressive societies. But the other emotion is often one of inspiration. And as I work with colleagues who are committed and passionate and dedicated, CRS colleagues who claim strangers to be brothers and sisters and devote their lives to serving them, living and working in countries which today's or yesterday's events in Libya, in Egypt, remind us of the risk that they take. You can't help but be filled with hope and a sense of all that is good. So it's always these two emotions. And I would say today is the same thing. Your words remind me of the enormity and the gravity of the situation related to the deprivation of international religious freedom. It is very dark. And you think about lives which are taken hostage and deprived of the most basic right that we are born with to seek truth in the God who created us. But your presence is the counterforce to that. First of all, it reminds me of courage. And in some of the research I have read, courage is actually something you develop through practice. And that practice is particularly inspired by other people who take actions which are courageous. We learn from each other. And I have to say, today's your presence reminds me of that courage. But you also remind me of how you show up, your presence, when the difficulty is so large. And in fact, you remind me that you show up persistently because it is difficult. And you are a testimony about the power of solidarity, that when we show up, when we speak up, and when we stand up, we shine a light into the darkness. And so I want to say thank you to all of you for that. And so as closing prayer, I think just to remember that we work and live in the presence of God who has been with us this whole day, and that no matter how enormous the problems are, fortunately, it doesn't just depend on us. God gives us each other, and He gives us Himself. Whatever work that it is that we do, He multiplies that work. And when sometimes it's difficult to gauge the progress or feel like we moved the needle or not moved the needle, we just have to remember that the fruits may not be ours to see, but it doesn't mean the work will bear no harvest. And to end, I pray for all of us that our work is filled with joy, is filled with hope, is filled with grace, and is filled with love. God bless all of us, and thank you for being here. Amen.